Welcome, 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 my lovely brothers and sisters. Welcome, welcome to another live book reading. I'm reading from another book this day, which is called The Story of Isis, and it is also a book written by Wes Penre. I have been guided by Spirit to present you chapter 1 of this book, which is in actuality titled Isis and the Backstory. And in this chapter 1, we will go through Marduk's genocide, Isis and the bloodlines of Cain and Abel and Seth, Isis as the mother goddess, the creation of Atlantis, the importance of our physical body, Cain's bloodline, and Enki's mutiny, Isis and Mother Goddess in the Matrix, the non-player characters, Isis trapped, and Isis at Lake Baikal. I do around about 10 to 11 pages because it's a long chapter. So welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in today. I don't know if you come through Facebook, Rumble, or YouTube. But anyways, I'm very thankful that you're here and that you are willing to listen along. So Isis, the backstory. Why is it that I have been guided to this chapter? Because these bloodlines are still having great influences all over our world. And their influences are not so positive as we think. All right, Isis, the backstory. There have been various controversies about Isis in history and in mythology. Our history and mythology are very much distorted and twisted. So there's truth in it, but you need to read them with the guidance of your spirit and ask your spirit where to find the gems and pearls of truth in mythology and in history. In the Wes Penre papers, she had a significant role in the human history, even before the creation of Earth, after being quite present until way into the third construct. And we are living in the third construct, also known as the matrix, or you can say simulation, whatever you want to label it with. She suddenly disappeared from history, only briefly heard from again. from time to time, but that is only because people do not know where to look. And it seems, according to Wes Penre, and this is also being described in this the Story of Isis book, it seems that Princess Diana was in actuality a reincarnation of Isis. So that also explains the lot of Isis symbolism around Princess Diana, and especially around that moment of her death, which many still are seeing as a deliberate attempt, a deliberate attempt on her life and a deliberate kill. And if it is necessary, I will read that part too. Um, but that is only because people do not know where to look. She, Isis, lives and dies just like us, and she incarnates in new bodies with new names. If we can track her that way, we can get a clue on her whereabouts over time. Since I wrote the Wes Penre papers, I have received lots of concerned emails and messages from readers wondering if Isis is okay and where she is today. Although I have no information about her immediate whereabouts, I think I have traced her at least to the 20th century England. Furthermore, I believe I can shed some light on certain details about her groundbreaking actions after she created her unique bloodline at Lake Baikal, some thousands of years ago. But first, let us give some backstory to explain who Isis is and her major involvement with us humans. Isis was born in the Sirius star system to her Syrian mother Gula and her Aryan father Ninurta, Aryan father from Orion, Ninurta, also called Prince Enlil. Ninurta is also known as what is known as Archangel Michael. In the ancient texts, Wikipedia tells us passages in the pyramid texts connect Isis closely with Sopdet, the goddess representing the star Sirius. Sopdet being another title for the same semi-goddess Isis. And this is what Wikipedia tells us about Gula or Ba. Isis' mother from Sirius, the dog star, as astronomers sometimes call it. That is Wes Penre's emphasis. Gula, Sumerian, the Great. So that means Gula in Sumerian, the Great, was a Mesopotamian goddess of medicine, portrayed as a divine physician and midwife. Over the course of the 2nd and 1st millennia BCE, she became one of the main deities of the Mesopotamian pantheon, and eventually started to be viewed as the second highest ranked goddess after Ishtar. She was associated with dogs and could be depicted alongside these animals, for example, on kuduru, inscribed boundary stones, and receive figurines representing them as votive offerings. While Gula was initially regarded as unmarried in the Kassite period, she came to be associated with Ninurta, or Prince Enlil. As we can see here, Gula is associated with dogs. In the Wes Penre papers, I describe the Syrians as a dog species from the dog star Sirius, a wolfen reptilian race. So they have very much wolfen um, image in them. Yeah, their heads are like wolves. Their bodies are more reptilian. So I, Wes Penre, the writer of this book, portrayed Ninurta as an Aryan, which means he is from Orion, because the real name of Orion is in actuality Arion. So, and later they made it Orion, but it is not really correct. However, Orion or Orion is not just a star constellation, but also the name of the greater universe. The universe in which the Earth matrix is encapsulated. Therefore, Sirius as well as Earth is part of Orion or Orion. It is mostly a confusion of terms, but I will try to be as clear and distinct as possible. Also, the context will usually determine what is what. So, Gula. Gula is a being from Sirius, present on Earth with Ninurta during the second construct, also called the Atlantis era, when Noah's flood happened at the end of that construct. All these deities, save a few, left Earth and returned to the greater universe, Orion or Arion. Left on the physical Earth were Enki, Marduk, Ereshkigal, and Isis. And except for Enki, the other three are supposedly still within this immediate matrix system, because Enki is out of it. He has been castrated by Ninurta, and so Enki is being housed somewhere else. More about Enki's fate later. Before we move on, we need to understand that extraterrestrials in the greater universe, at least mostly, do not procreate through sex as we know it in our human form. There might be species in the developing worlds, in the material/physical universe, who procreate akin to us, but during my 5 to 6 years of researching and writing the Wes Penre papers between 2010 and 2015, collaborating with particularly one source from Orion, I learned that most species in the developing worlds reproduce through cloning, and others are androgynous and hermaphrodites, just like we humans once were. Because, lovely brothers and sisters, our blueprint is androgynous, and Enki and Marduk have splitted us in a separate female and a separate male, but this is not a natural thing to us. Our blueprint is androgynous. So we need to be, in actuality, an androgynous human being. So just like we humans once were, while living on our original planet, Tiamat. And Tiamat has been blown into billions of pieces, and Earth, the place that is now our home, is in actuality one of these pieces of Tiamat. That is why we see petrified trees, animals, mushrooms, and whatsoever that you find as petrified, because these are the leftovers of the Tiamat time during the galactic cosmic war that was going on. So existing a higher dimension, here on Earth there are still certain species such as snails and slugs that are hermaphrodites. Most species evolve in their home worlds up to the point when they are ready to leave their environment and their physical bodies behind and become non-physical. Then they leave their planet or star and move into the greater spiritual universe, also called the Ka. There they have no solid physical bodies anymore, traveling and communicating with thoughts, and they can move from one part of the universe to another in an instant just by thinking themselves to that location. Even though these more evolved beings do not have dense bodies as we do, they can shapeshift into any shape and form they wish by reorganizing their avatar, between brackets, their collective soul or spirit fires. And from their perspective, the environment is perceived to be just as physical as ours, but much less dense. If we could see those realities, they would look nebulous and transparent to us. So Ninurta and Gula did not have sex like we do when they produced Isis' body in Sirius a very long time ago. In Orion, when new beings are made, the couple, Ninurta and Gula in this case, can decide which gender they want the child to be by how they treat the egg. If the male does not fertilize the egg, the offspring becomes a male without having a father. But if the male fertilizes the egg, the offspring becomes a female. It's the exact same principles used by bees on our planet. Bees are of Orion, so they are Arians, just like we are, because lovely brothers and sisters, you are Arians or children of Orion. So bees are of Orion and thus also Arians. An egg can be fertilized through genetic tinkering. When two beings mix their DNA or the female creates a female without involving a male's DNA in a natural way, such as in Isis' case, Ninurta fertilized the egg, so his DNA was added to the mix of DNA that made up Isis' body on Sirius. Into this body, the three-unit composite of Isis descended. So that is the soul and mind and body. She was considered Queen Sophia's daughter on a spiritual level, while on a physical level she was half Syrian and half Orion, and her parents were Ninurta and Gula, the three-unit composite being of the mother goddess. She was royal, meaning she had the royal spirit in her DNA, just as we are, because we do not remember anymore that we also are royal, because we are a spark of the divine creatrix herself. We are the creation of the mother goddess Sophia herself. So we are royal too. But we have forgotten this, and it's about time that we start to remember whom we truly are. We have been gifted with spirit, and the ones that are pulling the strings here on earth lack spirit. And what they also lack is life force energy, so that is why they need us as living batteries. But it's about time, lovely brothers and sisters, beautiful human souls, that you start to remember whom you truly are. You are creators yourself. And you can create the most stunning things that we not have seen yet on this earth. So it's about time that you start to remember, because if you start to remember whom you truly are, and if more human souls on earth start to remember whom they truly are, then we can turn the tables, and then we can uh, leave this whole singularity timeline behind us. And then we can turn the tables in the sense that we then take our sovereignty back, and we take back this earth that is our home. Our home is now being ruled by beings known as Enki and Marduk, who lack spirit and who themselves have become cyborgs. I don't know what's wrong in this picture, but shouldn't we take our home planet back into our hands? Yes, I think so. Earth is ours. Earth is not from Marduk. Earth is not from Enki. Earth is not from fallen archangels. Earth is of us humans. And we need to take Earth back. We need to stand up, take our sovereignty back, reclaim our eternal sovereignty back, remembering that we are spirited beings, that we are a spark, a divine spark of the Mother Goddess Sophia herself. She has created us, not a god known as Enki, who is known as God the Father in the Bible, because that is not a true base story. Our story is that we have been created through the feminine Sophia, the divine Mother Goddess, the creatrix of this universe. And she is royal, so we are royal. So let's put on our royal robes and turn the tables here on earth. And let us take back our eternal sovereignty and stand as a soul group. Because as soon as we are standing as a soul group, as one, we can cry out to Orion. And then Orion can help us. But this cannot be done on an individual basis. We need to cry out as a whole group, as a whole soul group. Because there is free will, and Orion is not damaging our free will. So we need to stand up. We need to remember whom we are. And as soon as we do this, these pricksters, Enki and Marduk, have no room to rule anymore. They lose grip, and then the entire singularity collapses and the entire metaverse collapses. Because the entire metaverse and the singularity is only created with one purpose: for a cosmic galactic war against Orion. And if you do not make your choice, you will be part of it. All right. From the gods' viewpoint, blood and DNA are synonymous. Thus, we have the term bloodlines. When a spirited being enters a physical body, the DNA of the body and that of the three-unit composite mix with each other. So in that sense, both body and the three-unit composite share and combine their DNA. The same thing applies to us humans in our Homo sapiens bodies. More on this in a moment. This also means that Isis, when her Syrian body died, she inherited Syrian DNA from the body, carrying it with her in her three-unit composite. Her task as Isis in Sirius was to overview the Syrian star system to make sure there was no uproar of rebellion against Orion after the peace agreement between Sirius and Orion. Some species who are androgynous and hermaphrodites can take care of the entire fertilizing process themselves, since the same being comprises both genders and usually do not need an external male to fertilize the egg. The next thing we know about Isis is that she was present when Queen Sophia, the queen of the stars, i.e., the spirit Sophia, manifesting herself in the universe as a separate player and creatrix, created humankind as the only species in the universe born as soul minds with spirit bodies attached as a part of a sacred experiment. Other star races are born with only a soul and a mind. So we are being gifted with spirit and thus being gifted with a spirit body, making up an avatar with which they travel through the universe. They can, however, gain access to spirit as they evolve and can thus become creator gods in their own right and create in their imagination and manifest that inner construction in the external universe at will. So we humans have the innate power to do so and do not need to gain anything. We already have it. However, when we were entering the matrix, we deliberately got amnesia. Enki and Marduk gave us amnesia. Yeah, so this is why we have to start all over again. This is why humans do not learn from their mistakes. You can't blame a species that is deliberately mind wiped and deliberately brought into amnesia. So every time if one of us dies, their soul is being recycled into billions of pieces. Then some pieces are stitched together with other soul pieces, then shot back in a flesh body. And in the meantime, the entire history is being wiped away and also has been given to us amnesia. So then we come back in an earth body, in a meat body. We get born on earth again, and then we have to start all over again. So it's constantly creating the new wheel, so to speak. So this is one of the reasons why we as humans and as human soul group are constantly making the same mistakes, are constantly falling in the same traps, and do not learn from history. Because of this construct, they deliberately done this to us. So we need to wake up, and instead of blaming one another and getting pissed on the human race because they do not learn, we need to understand, but why is it that we humans do not learn from our mistake? Well, because of this construct, because of the fact that our minds are wiped clean, and because of the fact that they have given us deliberately amnesia. We already have it. However, when we were entering the matrix, we got amnesia, and most humans no longer know who they are and what they are capable of. And that is why I am saying, in this life, start to remember whom you are. We have been dumped down, and our genetics, our DNA is completely tempered. We have a 12 strings DNA. Yeah. So and we are now operating on a double helix, and this double helix system is deliberately so created because the double helix functions as a lock. It locks us into this matrix system and keeps us into this matrix system. So this is the real function behind the double helix. And so they have tempered our DNA from 12 strands into just 2 strands. Yeah? So that we became handy worker bees and thus handy slaves and cannon fodder and military battle pawns and whatever. And so food for Enki and food for Marduk and all their cohorts whom are working with them. So these soul minds never achieve a spirit body, which is what makes us humans truly immortal and creators. From birth, we are so magnificent. Really, we start to remember this magnificence in us. We can create the most stunning things, what I've said, things that we not have seen earlier here on earth yet. The soul minds are thus not genuinely perpetual, but can exist so long as the greater universe exists. So we humans will outlive even the destruction of the entire universe because we are eternal. From here on, when I am addressing humans, I will refer to us as 3-unit composites, which stands for soul, mind, and spirit body. That is what it means. We are 3 units in one. Those who lack spirit body, those of soul minds only, I will call 2-unit composites, since they comprise 2 units in one, lacking the spirit body. Almost all extraterrestrials are either 2-unit composites or 2-unit composites who somewhere in their development got access to spirit and could become creators themselves too. All right. Marduk's genocide. As conveyed in my previous work, there was a war in heaven, in Greek mythology called the Titanomachy. It was a war between the greater of elder gods, the Titans, and the lesser or younger gods, the Olympians, a war the latter group won. The Titans were the group of creator gods led by Queen Sophia, who created humankind on the planet Tiamat in our solar system, between Mars and Jupiter, but in a higher spiritual dimension. We see 3D remnants of it today as the asteroid belt. The lesser gods from Sirius, led by Marduk, won the war and destroyed Tiamat and all life on the planet with nuclear weapons. A few surviving humans fled together with Ninurta, who was part of the creator god team, away from our solar system. But many of us humans fell into a deep coma from the shock. And this coma we were in took 1,000 years. So we have been for 1,000 years in a deep coma, and later became part of the Earth experiment, which started with the Atlantis era. More correctly, it should be called the second Atlantis, because of the second construct. The first Atlantis was Tiamat, which I learned was a water planet. This doesn't mean it was all covered with water. However, our human scientists call the universe space and say it is a vacuum, when it would be more accurate to call it cosmic water, where water denotes ether or spirit. So the cosmic ocean from where all creation stems, Tiamat existed in the cosmic water. It was a spiritual world, not a physical one. Isis, who helped Sophia with the Tiamat project, educated by her, also fled to the solar system together with the queen and Ninurta and Enki, but later returned when Enki helped Orion create the second construct, Atlantis. Isis and the bloodlines of Cain, Abel, and Seth. After the Tiamat disaster, Enki returned to the solar system. He asked his mother, the Queen of the Stars, Sophia, if he could terraform a chunk of the remnants from Tiamat and continue the human experiment on what was to become, nowadays, Earth. It should be noted that Enki had nothing to do with the Syrian invasion, contrary to previous hypotheses. He was part of Sophia's team, although he was not happy with the tasks handed to him. Enki was the queen's firstborn and thus also the crown prince of Orion, the heir, so to speak. Therefore, he saw it as his birth-given right to oversee the Tiamat experiment, cooperating directly with his mother as the chief geneticist. However, because of his extreme pride and grandiose matter, how familiar, eh? Overt narcissism. Overt narcissism is loaded with grandiosity. Enki had earlier been denoted by the queen and her consort, Cain Enlil. Initially, he was appointed to be the chief genetist when creating humankind and thus contribute with his DNA, but he lost his position in favor of his younger brother, Prince Ninurta, also known as Prince Enlil, who instead inserted his DNA in the primordial human. When Tiamat and the human soul group were created, the queen gave his second-born son, Ninurta, the solar system as a gift to oversee, but responsible for, and be responsible for it, and to protect against intruders, having his Mach defense force to assist him if needed. Ninurta was also promoted to the crown prince and heir of Orion instead of Enki. This hurt Enki's pride, of course, and as the arch-narcissist he is, he planned on showing his mother and the rest of the universe that he was indeed worthy of the titles Chief Geneticist and Heir of Orion. After the Tiamat disaster, Enki saw his opportunity, hoping to regain his position as the heir, replacing Cain Enlil as the king of Orion should something happen to him. In certain terms, I think Enki was pleased with the Tiamat incident because the outcome made his brother Ninurta look incompetent, having failed to protect the solar system and the newborn human race alike, forced to flee the situation. Enki now wanted to prove that he could do a much better job than his brother, if Orion gave him a chance. Before Enki came forth with his idea, the Orion Council had decided to discontinue the human experiment altogether because from their perspective, it failed when Tiamat was destroyed. However, the queen had invested a lot in the human experiment. She had contributed with her own 3-unit composite, making us mini copies of herself, i.e., she gave spiritual birth to us, making us royal too. We literally became her children. And that is why it is called female, which means the males are coming from a female. And from what I came to understand, males are in actuality inverted females. So we literally became her children. She wanted to create a soul group that was spirited from birth and thus born as creator creators. But before she let us free in the greater universe to create, she wanted to put us in a harsh environment so we could grow up to mature beings, ready to take on the universe. Her hope for us was that we could graduate from the Tiamat experiment as a whole human soul group with more compassion and empathy than before we started, i.e., we would grow up and gain wisdom. The Queen wanted to breed more compassionate and responsible creators to stop the warlike behavior that sometimes disturbed the order of the universe. Therefore, Enki's idea probably did not seem so bad, and the Queen was eager to give it a try. Hence, Orion gave Enki a chance. He got the green light to set up and continue the experiment on Earth. This he did, and after much experimentation with different body types, he came up with Homo sapiens, which was at that point a semi-ethereal species of a lower destiny than the original Tiamat humans, i.e., us when we lived on Tiamat. In the Wes Penre papers, I called the original human species the Namlu'u. I will continue using that term in this book interchangeably with other terms such as the primordial human or the three-unit composite. Because of Enki's innate character flaws, Orion must have not completely trusted Enki with the task, aware of his grandiose and sometimes, most of the times, better said, tricky and manipulative behavior. Although they apparently thought he would make some progress since he was demoted. They wanted to give him a chance to continue where his brother had failed and to prove himself. So therefore, he was now allowed to add his DNA to the new human bodies, which means we as humans got a part of his personality inserted to supervise and oversee the new experiment. Orion put their own people on Earth, and Prince Ninurta was in command of the Orion team to Enki's dismay. I presume that must have annoyed Enki tremendously. He did not like his brother because he had been unjustly favored from Enki's perspective. And now he had to deal with Ninurta a second time as his so-called supervisor and overseer. So time passed and we humans evolved on Earth. Successfully, Syrians also arrived on Earth. This was allowed because the reason for the Titan War was a Syrians conflict with Orion over the ownership of the solar system, leading to the invasion and destruction of Tiamat. The argument about who owns what was not resolved, so the Syrians, per Orion's laws, still was allowed access to Earth and the solar system until the argument was settled and the ownership established. Isis returned to Earth before Ninurta and his Orion team, from what I understand, together with Enki, to be his helper if necessary. Enki and Isis are both master geneticists. The Orion overseers came into the picture later. So we need to understand that we also have some of Enki's personality in us. Yeah. At one point, Enki and Isis choose to have a human child together to strengthen Enki's bloodline. keeping it as pure as possible, and they had a baby boy. In Egypt, Enki was known as Osiris, the elder Osiris, because there is also an Osiris, the younger one. Or was that? Oh, that was Horus. Sorry, I get correction from Spirit. Um, So in Egypt, Enki was known as Osiris and Isis. In her human form, gave birth to Horus. The two-unit composite inhabiting Horus was the dreadful Marduk, who had led the Olympians to destroy Tiamat. Marduk was reincarnated into the elite bloodlines ever since, and he is still on Earth today and is still roaming over Earth today, taking on the role of the biblical Satan. So Satan in the Bible is Marduk. Whether the two knew that Marduk was going to take the Horus body is up for debate, but it stands to reason they did not. Marduk saw an opportunity to incarnate into the pure Enki Isis bloodline and take part in the human experiment. It is my conclusion that he had plans for humankind already by then, and the plans were and are indeed demonic. As we shall see further into this book, Marduk is known as the son of Enki, which is true on a physical level, since he is the biological offspring of Enki, between brackets Osiris and Isis. But on a soul level, there is no fundamental relationship between the two aside from that Marduk, through this incarnation as Horus, also inherited both Isis and Enki's DNA. So this is very important to understand. Marduk is initially a full-blooded Syrian. So this also explains his extreme aggressive behavior, because Syrians are aggressive beings and had no kinship with Enki or Isis until the Horus incarnation. At the end of the Atlantis era, Enki started tinkering with genetics again, and he and his Syrian cohorts copulated with human females, which is a high crime in Orion. Gods can copulate with each other in human bodies to strengthen bloodlines, but they are not allowed to have sex with humans directly. Beings from outside the construct of a developing species are not allowed to mix their DNA with the inhabitants of that world, having no relationship to that place. It completely messes up the entire purpose and destiny of that species, which has happened to us, unfortunately. And this messes up the entire purpose and destiny of that species. This intervention, in which Enki and some Syrians had sex with human females, resulted in strange mutations called the Nephilim, who were the giants of renown, as mentioned in the Bible. However, Enki didn't stop there. He also created many other abominations, and therefore he completely contaminated the human experiment, which was now rendered useless. Orion decided to call the human soul group home to Orion again, and thus finish the disastrous experiment for the second time. And here comes the whole flood story in place. It's not as what the Bible is teaching us. The real story behind the flood has to do with all this, with what I am reading right now to you. Therefore, the gods orchestrated Noah's flood. Orion initiated it, so the human three-unit composites could leave the nightmare that had emerged on Earth and return home. So they did this for our sakes too, to save us. And Enki was commanded to execute it. The plan was to wipe out all life on the planet. But of course, Enki tricked Orion by kidnapping a certain number of humans, including Noah and his family, to create his own experiment after the flood without Orion's supervision. All humans, three-unit composites, existing on Earth today were in the group of hijacked three-unit composites, which means me, you, everyone that is on Earth, and so you whom are listening to this storyline too. And thank you so much for listening along. Isis as the mother goddess, and so the creation of Atlantis. Before we move on to discuss what happened at the time of and after Noah's flood about 9,600 years ago, let's rewind to the beginning of the Earth experiment, following the destruction of Tiamat. Enki had just terraformed a piece of the exploded planet floating around in the asteroid belt in the third dimension, and he was ready to continue the human experiment, eager to start as being told in the Nag Hammadi texts, the Sumerian cuneiform, and in the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation story. And it's quite interesting to read that story too. In the beginning, while looking for so-called gold, Enki started out with creating clones. So this is how old cloning is. Creating clones of different humanoid species, letting Syrian two-unit composites inhabit them and do some physical work on Earth to help with the terraforming. It should be noted they were not really looking for gold as in the metal gold. It is a metaphor for creating us humans. We are the gold. Yeah? Enki was trying to create the perfect human body that could house a human-spirited three-unit composite. Gold. The Syrians, however, were very uncomfortable with these early bodies that Enki cloned, so they rebelled, and Enki stopped using those prototypes and let the Syrians off the hook. Eventually, he thought he had created great prototypes to house human three-unit composites. He had created the first Adam in the Garden of Eden, which is the name of a restricted area where his genetic experiments could take place. And I would highly recommend you to also read the Terra papers from Robert Morning Sky. You can go to the website baruchababashamyahuah.net. There on the Wes Penre webpage, Go down and you will find PDF documents which you can download for free. And there in these documents, you can find the Terra papers of Robert Morningsky too. Download these and read because they contain a lot of interesting information too. And they are very much in alignment with what Wes Penre is writing. Enki created an artificial soul in the astral dimension, specifically made to work in our density, and he attached it from the astral onto the physical body via the so-called silver cord. The Homo sapiens body would act as a physical version of the human spirit body to which the three-unit composite could attach. However, the bodies could not house human composites, so we bounced off, and Adam was unable to move around. Enki worked in sweat and tears trying to make this work. Eager to show himself off to his mother, he must not fail now, or he would not be given another chance. Then Isis, who was spirited, came to Enki's assistance, being of a lower manifestation of Queen Sophia, but with her unique personality. She moved to Earth from Sirius, where she had been an Orion overseer of that system. Following the old peace agreement between Orion and Sirius in the past. In the Nag Hammadi texts, Isis was called Zoe Sophia. Zoe means life in Greek, and Isis was giving life to Homo sapiens in the second construct, thus becoming Eve, which in Hebrew means to live, to give life, or to breathe. She told Enki that the human bodies needed a breath of spirit into them for our three-unit composites to attach. This is thoroughly described in the Nag Hammadi texts, so Enki and Isis, the two geneticists, now work together, and Isis blew her creative breath, also interpreted as dragon breath, into the cells of the lifeless Adam. Yes, so here comes this whole idea of this dragon thing. Yes, dragons can spew fire, but they also can spew water and ice. But whom are these dragons? These are in actuality beings who are in such a way developed that they are creators themselves, and they can do things with them so that they are eventually able to do such things as spewing fire into their creation. And fire is life, breath. So the creative dragon breath into the cells of the lifeless Adam, who then started coming to life. Then Isis incarnated with her three-unit composite into the body of Adam. Now the three-unit composite could connect because Isis' spirit, life force, was breathed into Adam, mixing with the body's DNA. Therefore, to be accurate, the first working Homo sapiens was not male, but female. It was Isis who made the body come alive. It was Isis who made the body come alive. Adam, at that stage, was completely genderless. And the spirited Adam, created by female energy, was Eve, aching to Isis. Thus, the female came before the male. It is spirit that creates, and spirit is feminine. This was the point when Enki created two genders. He had little choice because he could no longer clone human bodies without Isis constantly blowing her breath into each separate cloned body. Creating two genders was a better solution, he mused. Then humans could procreate on their own, and their offspring automatically inherit spirit through the parents. DNA and new three-unit composites could attach to the offspring. But he needed to also create something that made humans want to procreate. So he invented sex as a very pleasurable thing that humans would love. In that case, he was quite right. Adding sex made human three-unit composites very curious and eager to incarnate. And Enki therefore had no problems inserting three-unit composites into the Adam bodies. We attached willingly. Thus Enki and Isis created man and woman. The two geneticists both incarnated in human bodies, and Enki, who is not spirited, but a two-unit composite, soul-mind, got a feel for how it is to be attached to spirit via the physical body, and he gained some creative abilities. The demi-god and the demi-goddess then had sex in human bodies and created Abel and then Cain. Thus Enki had added his own DNA into the blood of Adam and Eve. Abel was the firstborn, so Enki preferred him over Cain. And we know the rest. Cain, of course, got jealous and killed his elder brother to get the sole attention from his father. So a repetition of narcissistic traits. Again, yeah? In the meantime, Isis, as Eve, had sex with a human rather than with Enki, and the Seth bloodline saw the light of day, jump-starting a new bloodline. The Seth bloodline thus had lesser Enki blood/DNA than the Cain bloodline, which was created with Enki's DNA, directly mixed with Isis. Therefore, the Cain bloodline, having Enki's, Isis and Ninurta's DNA, because Isis was Ninurta's daughter, turned out to be more intelligent than the Seth bloodline. Thus, Enki chose humans from the Cain bloodline to supervise the Sethians. They eventually became today's global elite. Yeah, so the global elite are from the Cain bloodline, while the Seth lineage comprised most human three-unit composites. However, there was another so-called problem in the beginning when humans were a few. There was a lot of incest going on, and that had a devastating consequences. It deteriorated the physical bodies after a few generations, and people most likely became retarded. Therefore, Enki and Isis must create more bodies together that were not directly connected to the main bloodline. So they continued tinkering with DNA without diluting the DNA they themselves had contributed with earlier. The new bodies were still of the same semi-god/semi-goddess DNA mix, but created separately from the original ancestor lineages to avoid the negative effects from incest. Consequently, they let the existing humans copulate with these new bodies, wherewith the ancestral lines became more alienated from each other over time. I would suggest this is when Enki created different blood types, different eye colors, and people with diverse skin color, separate from the original humans who were black. This made it easier to distinguish between different upgrades, and he could comfortably decide who would be allowed to procreate with whom in the beginning. However, Enki was very careful to keep a string of Cain's bloodline as pure as possible, making sure it was minimally diluted. Proving himself worthy to Orion, he needed his own DNA to be as dominant as possible in humans. And he needed Ninurta's DNA to be there too, to strengthen the connection to Orion in favor of Sirius. But Ninurta's blood must be secondary. So if Enki's DNA was more dominant in humans than that of Ninurta, he could claim the human soul group as his own. Yeah? Rather than Ninurta's, whose DNA now was less. In Orion, to claim ownership of a star race, the creator must prove the soul group comprises his or her dominant DNA. It is all about DNA and bloodlines. Without his dominant DNA, Enki cannot claim ownership to the human species. And now you get this understanding why in 2020 they enforced or tried to enforce us to do all these weird tests, mouth and nose swabs and whatever they came up with that time. Why? Because of the DNA. This is also one of the reasons behind Ancestry.com, which is a platform of Google where they collect human DNA. They need to know who is who and who has whose bloodline and thus genetics in them. Yeah, so that is why they are doing everything to collect our DNA. It is my impression that the early Homo sapiens were held in captivity in Eden for a long time, and Enki decided which humans could have sex with whom for the experiment to work properly. When there were enough of us in the contained Eden, he let us loose in the world and he said, "Go out, procreate." Before that happened, something else occurred, which bothered Enki and the Syrian Khan kings. Very soon, Enki noticed how intelligent Adam was when he/she was spirited. She consulted with the Syrian overlords, the Khan kings, or better said, sorry. Enki consulted with the Syrian overlords, the Khan kings, and they all became frightened because Adam was smarter than they were. Ooh, but that brought some jealousy. um, which was, of course, not acceptable. Or the overlords could not control the human soul group. So that is the main reason why they had to tinker our DNA and temper our DNA also, because in actuality we were far more smarter than they are. So let us remember all this, lovely brothers and sisters, beautiful human souls, that you are far more than those whom are pulling the strings here on earth. You are royal, you are gifted with a spirit body, and you in actuality have 12 strands of DNA, and so you are far more smarter. Remember all this. We need to turn the tables here on Earth and take back our home planet. Earth is ours, not theirs. Therefore, as the Gnostic texts say, Enki threw Adam further down into the abyss, which means he lowered the frequency of Earth, making Adam forget who he primarily was. After that, the overlords felt more comfortable. So in the Wes Penre papers and the Orion books, I discussed how Enki lost his creative abilities after he was castrated by Ninurta in the Rigel star system and thrown into the Apsu, which likely is the lowest of the lowest of the lowest density of the astral, where he is contained since then. What does losing creative abilities truly mean? It was kind of a mystery to me until recently when I realized what it must be. Enki, the Syrians, including Marduk and other invaders who are all two-unit composites, gain creative abilities as soon as they enter a human body which is spirited, credit to Isis. Thus, the Syrians have creative abilities when they inhabit human bodies, albeit not to our extent, because we have spirit innately and in abundance through our original spirit bodies. Enki, locked up in the Apsu, can thus not attach to human bodies anymore, and therefore he lost his what is known as creativity. And with this said, I have come to the end of reading part 1 of this long chapter, and I'm exactly on the half of it. So the next time could be today, and otherwise tomorrow, maybe later on the day, I will do part 2. And then I start with the importance of our physical body. So it is about time that we get to know some in-depth information of what had and has truly happened to us humans, and what has truly happened to our human soul group. So this is the main reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm presenting you this information so you can meditate upon it, ponder upon it. Please share this information. A lot of the information in ancient texts, unfortunately, have been distorted. So if you read ancient texts, read it with your spirit and ask your spirit to help you to find the gems and pearls of truth in the texts. It does not mean that these ancient texts are not relevant anymore. You only need to find the gems and pearls of truth that are still in it, although marginalized. This also counts for this so-called holy book known as Bible. The Bible is not a pure word of God at all. It is in actuality a storyline in which we can find pieces, gems and pearls of truth in it that are still valid and can help us to understand whom we are and can help us in understanding our history. But do not stay stuck on that book and do not claim it as if it is God's word, because the God that this book belongs to is Enki, and also Marduk. So the more we know about Enki and the more we know about Marduk, then you also know that the Bible is not really 100% reliable book. So take out what you can take out of it. What I say, if you read that book and other ancient books, read it with your spirit. Ask your spirit to help you find the gems and pearls of truth, so that you can start remembering whom you are, and so you can start remembering the history of Earth and yourself, because this is the very importance that we need to do. We need to stop focus ourselves on mainstream media. We need to stop being focused on things that are completely irrelevant. We need to ask ourselves, um, what is truly going on this earth. And through educating and informing ourselves, we then can start seeing all the things that are happening, whom are deliberately created and instigated in this matrix, are uh, happening with a certain reason, and that reason is to push us humans deeper into the singularity and thus in the metaverse, which is not created for our benefit at all. It will be our new prison system, yeah, where our soul will be forever locked, so-called forever between quotation marks, but our spirit will be captured in technology, and it will become very harsh for our spirit to live in metaverse conditions. So all the things that are happening here on Earth, all these psychological operations and whatever, is nothing more than constantly have us traumatized. I also have presented a video about the global traumatization. Please watch this one too. There is a global traumatization going on. They are traumatizing us humans 24/7 a day. They do this to compromise our psyche, yeah, and to fragment, better said, to fragment our psyche. This is exactly what happens in MK Ultra. In MK Ultra, what they do is fragmenting the human soul. So this is what is happening if you are rolling out MK Ultra all over the world and are doing it with all humans. So this is the reason why they instigate all these assassinations, psychological operations, and all these other things, such as all these movements to work against us. All these movements, such as Black Lives Matters and White Lives Matters and blah, 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 what they have created and instigated into this world, are created to make sure that we start to hate one another, that we start to fight with one another, and the same with the entire woke movement. This entire woke movement is created to hate one another, to have a hate against one another. So this is something you need to realize. Everything is happening with a reason in this world. Nothing is coincidentally, nothing is random. And this is the main reason that I am presenting you this information, to pass on to you information that can help you to understand the things that are going on, so that you can see them for what they truly are, and through this are becoming lesser affected by it. All right. With this said, I end this live book reading with a short musical number titled Hope, and created by Ben Sound. I wish you all a beautiful day filled with a lot of love, joy, wisdom, truth, and revelations directly coming from your spirit, your own spirit. All right, thank you so much. And maybe today I will present the second part, and otherwise tomorrow. All right, thank you so much for tuning in through Facebook, through YouTube, through Rumble. Thank you for reading along with me. Thank you for listening, and thank you for spending your time by listening along to this information. All right, I see you next time.